Okay, well, this week we see that last week um, Jacob deceived his father and got the blessing, which he should have got anyways. Esau should have got it, but Esau was not in right standing with God and his relationship with him and everything else. But Jacob was, for the most part. Um, and he received the blessing, and God didn't say anything about it. When we really look at this, God never confronted him about the deception that happened, right? So the question is, did God condone it then, or did he just ignore it because Jacob was in the right standing with him? As we read this week, I don't think God ignored it. I know a lot of people use the word karma, but we see that Jacob ends up having karma, that God does bring this back on his own head. But there's a purpose for it. Because even though Jacob didn't really know God all that well, we know that he was raised up in the knowledge of God and some understanding of him and stuff like that. We do know that Yitzhak taught him. We do know that according to the sages that Yaakov also studied in the study halls of Shem and Eber. So he got to know God in that way. And from there, he was able to build a relationship. Now, the thing that's interesting, too, is that he ends up having to leave because his brother wants to kill him. And the thing is like God told Rebecca that she's carrying two different nations in her. And one nation will, well, the older will serve the younger, okay? But they'll be in constant flux with each other. Even in her belly, she knew that. And later on, we do see that this is not just the first time. It's just something that's continuing. And later on, the descendants of Edom and Israel fight as Edom, as Amalek tries to take back the birthright and the blessing that should have been Esau's. That's something we read about later. And we also see this too later on too, is that when King Saul was sent in to destroy all the Amalekites, destroy them, disobeyed God, and later on, a descendant of King Agag tries to destroy all the children of Israel, again trying to get the firstborn blessing and stuff like that from Israel. And so it's a constant battle, and that's why God says that whenever you see an Amalekite, you are to kill him. And it's not necessarily the person, but it's the spirit of the Amalekite. Those are trying to take the blessing away from Jacob and his descendants. Okay? So as we go through this, Jacob leaves, and he goes to a place, according to the sages, as Jacob is leaving, God caused the sun to go down faster, so that he had to go to this place, Beit El, which is on Har Moriah, the mountain of Moriah, and he goes to sleep there. He uses a rock for a pillow, which I don't know how anybody could use a rock for a pillow myself. Yeah, but apparently he did. And in this dream, we see this dream he has, God reveals to him, and he's able to see the angels ascending and descending. Now, we at least know that it was at least 4 angels, 2 going up and 2 coming down, at least the minimum, because it says it's plural, so at least 2 or more, right? Going up and down. It was going up and down on him. And then God stands before him and says, I am Adonai, the God of Abraham, your grandfather, and the God of Yitzhak. The land on which you are lying I will give to you and to your descendants. Your descendants will be as numerous as the grains of dust on the earth. You will expand to the west, to the east, the north, and to the south. By you and your descendants, all the families of the earth will be blessed. I am with you. I will guard you wherever you go, and I will bring you back into this land because I won't leave you until I have done what I have promised you. Okay? So Jacob wakes up and he realizes that this has to be the house of God, he says, the gate of heaven. And which is really interesting because he anoints it. He sets up a stone and he anoints it, right? And he called it Bethel, or Bethel, in English, Bethel, house of God. But the town was originally called Luz, so the town near it was called Luz, but the place where he is at was Bethel. And in it, he makes this declaration, he makes this vow, if God will be with me and guard me, that I am traveling, giving me bread to eat and clothes to my father's house in peace, then Adonai will be my God. And this stone which I have set up as a standing stone will be God's house and tends to you. What's interesting is that that's Harmoria. That's the Temple Mount. Later on, we read where Solomon builds the temple in Jerusalem. Now, there was a small town on the mountain already called Salem, okay? And that's the town that David conquered later on, calling it Yerushalayim, and making his capital, okay? And they extended the walls out, which ended up encircling the mountain of Moriah. And later on, that's where King Solomon, King Shlomo, King of Peace, built the temple. And God is fulfilled Jacob's vow, and that Jacob's descendants fulfilled that vow in building a house of God. And that's the thing too, is that when we read in here, even in the New Testament, New Covenant writings, the apostolic writings, then was talking about the house is talking about the temple. It was known as the house. Okay? And here we see it later on in the future, that's where it's built. Okay? But we also see here is that Yaakov's journey, Yaakov's descendants are going to make the same journey. Okay? They're going to make the same journey. And God will be with them as well. And we see that in when they're taken by the Babylonians and the story of the Medes and Persians and of Esther. And God is with them, protecting them, keeping them safe, and he brings them back, right? And so Yaakov, in a sense, he goes to Laban, and he ends up working 20 years for him, 7 years for. In the end, he is deceived, Karma, and he's given Leah. Now, it's not that Leah was ugly or anything. When it's talking about, it's that she was crying, that she was, maybe she wasn't treated as well. We don't know. The sages say that she cried because she didn't want to marry Esau. She wanted to marry a tzaddik, a righteous man. And so she cried a lot because she thought she was destined to marry Esau. Okay? Yeah, I'm sure you would. Yeah. So that's why her eyes were weak. But Rachel was beautiful in stature and everything, it says. And so, of course, Jacob longed for that relationship, right? But again, just as he had deceived his father and his brother, Laban deceives him. Laban was a deceiver as it was. And in essence, he was the king of deceivers, according to the sages, according to the Midrash and stuff. He deceived his own people in Haran. Everybody knew him as a deceiver, and and stuff. But anyways, so in turn, Jacob is deceived. But with that, he does marry Leah, and then after the 7 days, he agrees the next morning to, after the 7 days, the marriage week with Leah, that then they would give him Rachel if he worked another 7 years. And so we look at that. Well, what's with the number 7? 7 years, 7 years. Well, 7 is the number for completion, right? So he completed 7 years, got Leah, but it wasn't who he was supposed to get for his wages, right? But for another 7 years, finishing that, then he would legally have Rachel as his wife. But he was able to go in and marry her right after the 7 days. 7 days again, completion, right? And with that, we see he has, Leah is not as loved by him as he loves Rachel, right? But you know, Leah, the unloved wife, has half of the tribes. She is blessed with half the maidservants who became, and Rachel only 2. They contribute 2 apiece, right? So Leah, as it says, we read in the prophets and stuff, unloved wife will have more children than the loved wife. So, and that's what we see. And so Jacob has these children and stuff, and in essence, he's in the diaspora. He's in exile, right? And the children of Israel were in exile when they left Israel for Babylon. Why? Because of their sin, because of their proudness. As it goes on, we read in where is it? In Hosea, and this is important too. In Hosea, that they are taken out of. Anyways, we see that that this is talking about Ephraim here, which is who? A descendant of Rachel, right? Joseph's son, her firstborn son, Ephraim, who is the secondborn, right? And what we see later on in history with Ephraim too is that that Ephraim, a descendant of Ephraim, is made king over Israel after the kingdom is split from after King Shlomo dies, King Solomon dies, and his son takes over. The kingdom is split, and the northern kingdoms are given a king who is a descendant of Ephraim. And God offers the descendant of Ephraim, the new king, the same promise he made to David. You know, if you will follow my instructions, if you will keep my commandments and so forth and worship me, then I will make your household forever, right? But he doesn't. He rejects God, and we see that too, because what we're looking at here is that later on, when they're getting ready to leave to head back, God tells them, go back to the land of your fathers. This is after he's got his 11 sons and his 1 daughter, and it's been 20 years now. It's time to go. It's been a generation almost, you know, half a generation. It's time to go back to the land. Go back to the land where you were born. And so that's what he's going to do. And so he calls his wives and said, hey, this is what's going on. This is what we're going to do. And they agree with him that that's what needs to happen. And in so doing, as he gets everything ready to go, Rachel steals her family's idols and hides them. And what we see here too is that this is coming along with Ephraim. Ephraim, the king of his descendant, the king of the northern tribes, brings the northern tribes into deep idolatry, the worship of Baal. Okay, and let's see. When Ephraim spoke, there was trembling. He was a power in Israel, but when he incurred guilt through Baal, he died. Okay, and so now they keep adding sin to sin, casting images from their silver idols. They invent for themselves, all of them, the work of craftsmen, sacrifice to them. They say, men give kisses to calves. Therefore they will be like a morning cloud, like the dew and that disappears early, like chaff blown by wind from the threshing floor, or like smoke that goes out of the window. Okay, they will go into dispersion. But unlike the southern tribes, Judah and Shimon and Benjamin, well, Benjamin was part of the northern tribes too, but they won't necessarily return in the time figured. But God gives those who attach themselves to Judah, to Yehuda, of the tribes, and they go into exile into Babylon. He does say that they will come back. Not all of them come back, right? We know that many of them still remained in the other nations and then continued to remain in other nations and stuff. And that's, but they were bringing, they may not have returned, but they did bring blessings to the other nations, as God said. And ultimately, the blessing we see is Yeshua, that through Abraham's descendants that they would bless all the nations. It says that to Jacob that he will expand from to the east, to the west, to the north, to the south. Okay, and that through him all the nations will be blessed. Okay, that's talking about the seed that comes from him, which is the Messiah. That through the Messiah the nations will be blessed, and it's through Israel bringing the light of the Torah to the nations, because it says, as the angel said to Abraham, or said to the other angels, his descendants will keep my Torah. They will walk in my ways, and they will be a light to the nations. And even though it took them a while, because that's the way young kids are, right? In that show, Stargate, the Nox tell the Earthlings that the young don't always listen to the elders. The very young don't always do as they are told, right? And so they're still young, even though maybe there was centuries, whatever. They're still young, still learning. God is still trying to develop them. But later on, they do learn a lot of stuff. Not that they're perfect. Nobody's perfect. We're not perfect, right? But as it says in Hosea as well, in 14, people say, well, how are they supposed to offer, with the temple destroyed and so forth and so on? They can't do any offerings and stuff, right? It says in chapter 14, verse 3, take words with you and return to Adonai. Say to them, forgive all guilt and accept what is good. We will pay instead of bulls the offerings of our lips. So our praises and our worship of God, for now, are in exchange for the offerings that were made at the temple. But the temple, like I said, was built there on the same spot that Jacob had fallen asleep. That Jacob had the dream of the ladder, of the angels ascending and descending. And actually in the Hebrew it says on him. It doesn't say there, but it actually says on him. And that's the interesting thing, because we also read, which Yeshua uses the same exact thing, talking about Nathaniel. Yes, indeed, I tell you that you will see heaven open and the angels of God going up and coming down on the Son of Man. It's the same picture. It's the same thing, okay? In reference, the angels coming down on Jacob is the same reference Yeshua used, meaning that that he is going to be blessed, that through him the Messiah is going to come, and through him the angels are actually going to be coming upon the Messiah. And we see that the angels ministered to Yeshua many times, and when the angels took an avid part in Israel as well. But with that, we see that the things that are happening to Jacob, we see later on his descendants, that happens to his descendants. And Yeshua, his greatest descendant, we see, again, using the same verbiage as he did about himself, but using the verses from from Genesis there, that he is the one whom Jacob was pointing to. And we even see that with Abraham when he was going to offer up Isaac, that it says that when the angel told him not to hurt Isaac and stuff like that, it says that he looked, and behold, there was a lamb caught in a thicket by its horns, right? And in that word, it can mean not just seeing afar, but seeing through time, okay? So seeing far off can also mean seeing in time, and that Yeshua even uses that example when they're accusing him, well, when did you ever see Abraham, And Yeshua is Yeshua is saying that he saw my time and rejoiced. When did he see his time? When he looked beyond, when he saw a ram caught by its thicket, by the horns by its thickets. And the horns represent the crown, and the thickets represent the sins of the people, okay, on his head, right? And what did Yeshua wear? A crown of thorns, right? So there's the picture. So Abraham's seen it. It's passed down to Isaac. Now Jacob has the vision of the angels coming down on him and going up from him. Why? Because he plays the pivotal piece on earth. Abraham was 10 generations after the flood. Noah was 10 generations after creation. And what happened? He was the only one found righteous on the earth. And so God destroyed the earth and started with him, right? The time came again to judge earth. In the 10th generation, he found Abraham. And that's why he makes that declaration that should I withhold from Abraham the things I'm about to do to Sodom and Gomorrah, since in the days to come, his family, his descendants will keep my ways. They will be a light to the world, right? So he sees that. And the judgment that could have happened in that time is stayed. It's put away so that these things can develop. God has a plan. He already knows all these things, right? But still, we are given the opportunity to choose. Abraham could have chosen a different route, but he didn't. And we know some of the stories about Abraham and his father having a idol shop where he sold idols and stuff, right? And one day he asked Abraham to watch it because he has to go and whatever he's got to do. And when he comes back, all the idols are destroyed except for a big one in the middle with a hammer in its hand. And Abraham's dad says, what happened? Says, that big idol there grabbed that hammer and destroyed all the other idols. His dad says, impossible. They're not real. And Abraham says, exactly. Right? They're not real. Abraham knew. Abraham, as he was called, is a friend of God. He's still human. He still made mistakes. That's why when God made the covenant with Abraham, he made it with himself and gave it as an honorary covenant to Abraham because he knew Abraham wouldn't be able to keep it, and he needed this covenant to keep going, right? It would have ended with Abraham in the very next chapter because he tried to do it on his own instead of waiting on God. But because God made it with himself, Abraham couldn't break it. And it was given to him, as Rav Shaul says, that it was given to him because of obedience. Okay, even though he made mistakes, even David made mistakes. He made a big one too, but yet God called him a man after his own heart. I know I talk to people like, how can God say anything good about David after he did what he did? because David repented. David realized his sin and he repented and God forgave him. And that's the same thing, that when we sin, we need to confess our sins and realize that we need to change. And see, the Torah doesn't change us on the inside, okay, in essence. It doesn't. Not the written Torah as it is, because it's what's on the outside. We are on the outside, basically. But what it is took that Torah, in essence, and it will happen, that it will be written on our hearts and in our minds. It will be part of who we are, our DNA, like I've said. The time is coming when that'll happen. But in the meantime, there was no way for people to really change because sin was part of our DNA, but there was a way to try and live, and that's why God set up the sacrificial systems. Recognized what we had done. We could come and sacrifice and be in obedience to God, repent, and receive forgiveness. But it wasn't something that would change us on the inside. It only covered the outside. Just like when Yeshua was talking to the Pharisees, that they're like whitewashed dishes, or they're clean on the outside but dirty on the inside. That's what we are. But through Yeshua now, when we accept Yeshua, that he is the Messiah, and that through his death and resurrection we can now be made clean, it's not just talking about the outside, it's talking about the inside. And that's the blessing that has come from Jacob down the ages. Not only that, but really look at all the things that that the Jewish people have contributed to this world. The Jewish people have contributed laws and stuff that we still use today, and our Constitution is written based on those laws. And I know people argue that, oh no, the Constitution is a man-made thing, but it is to a degree. But it's used. We see that it's backed up by laws from the Torah, and that our preamble is that men and women are created. Men are created equal, right? And that we are given the liberty, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Basically, our rights. The government doesn't give us our rights. God gives us our rights. The government is always trying to take away our rights, just so you know. But we need to acknowledge, that God gives us these rights. God gives us his Torah. And when we are obedient to the Torah to the best of our ability, we don't have to be perfect. We do make mistakes, but God says when you make a mistake, confess it. Take responsibility. Something that Adam didn't do. Adam didn't take responsibility for his bad teaching of his wife to his wife about not eating from the tree of good and evil, right? And she did it. And it caused, because he had added to God's commandment, the adversary was able to use that like a good lawyer does. Oh, there's a loophole here because he taught you this. Well, did God really say that? Right? Telling her. And it looks good. Look good. Try, is it really going to kill you to touch it? And it brought in her mind doubt, especially when she touched it, nothing happened. And it says that Adam was right there with her, right? He's watching the whole thing, and he's going, we'll see what happens, maybe she'll die, and then God will give me a new one, but nothing happened to her. And she's like, well, if nothing happened to me, I've touched it, nothing's happened to me, well, maybe I can eat it. Maybe Adam was full of feces, right? And so she eats it, and it's good, but nothing happened, because she wasn't responsible. And Adam's like going, oh my goodness, did God lie to me? Is this serpent telling the truth that I won't surely die? God is hiding this from me? And so he goes ahead and eats it, right? And it's at that moment when he takes the bite that the earth shakes, the heavens shake. In a sense, yeah. And their clothing, the glory of God is removed from them, and they realize that, oh, they're naked. Something's changed. They're naked. They're no longer wearing the glory of God. And so they have to make, they sew fig leaves together to hide their nakedness, right? And when God confronts them on it, because God knew what happened, that's why he left. He left them on their own. Why? Because they had to make their own choice. As long as God was there, they would always choose him. But God has given us free will. He's given us choice. Abraham could have taken a different route, but he didn't. He chose God, which is what God was looking for on that 10th generation. He looked for Abraham to make the right choice so that the nations of the world would become blessed and the Messiah would come to the world to redeem the world. Why? Because God is trying to bring us back to the way things were originally before Adam fell, before Adam and Eve sinned. And what did Adam do? You know, he blamed the woman. He not only blamed the woman, but he blamed God. The woman you gave me, not my fault. It's the woman, and you gave me the woman, right? And it's something that's been going on for a long time, right? We always blame the wife, right? It's always her fault, right? What?
The reason men die earlier than women. They blame God.
Well, that, and they sometimes don't listen to their wives when their wives are full of wisdom, right? And men tend to be childlike up until they're in their 50s, right? We see that a lot. Maybe even older, I don't know. But the thing is that Abraham made the right decision. Isaac made the right decision, but he lived in the land. He was, and God was with him in the land, right? Well, now it's Jacob's turn to make a choice. And God offers him the choice. Now, you're going into exile here, but I'll be with you. I'll be with you, and I will protect you. I will feed you. I will do all this stuff for you. And Jacob realizes that, yeah, this is the house of God that, and I didn't know it, and he feels unworthy, but he sets up a stone, anoints it, and says that if you will keep your word and you will bring me back this way and bring me home safe and in peace to my family, then you will be my God, right? And I will build here a house for you. And we see that later on, that does happen. But it follows when we see Israel, the descendants of Israel, of Jacob, following in the same footsteps, And it doesn't happen just once, it happens a couple different times, right? But Jacob has to go into the wilderness. He has to go away from the land because, why? Because as long as he's there, he's not going to have the choice to make. He's going to always choose God. He's always going to choose the land. So God has to take him away from that so he can make the right choices and to grow. Grow physically, but also to grow spiritually. To become the tzaddik, the righteous man that he became. And in that, he has to suffer. And I know a lot of people say, well, man shouldn't have to suffer. Well, yeah, man should suffer because it's through suffering that we grow. We learn from our mistakes. These wealthy people that everybody seems to mad at because they got lots of wealth and stuff. Yeah, some of them it was handed down to them by their parents, whatever. That's fine. But there are a lot of them that they had to work hard, and they weren't successful right away. There was many things. You can go look that they failed at a lot of things until finally something clicked, and that's what they were able to do, and that's how they got rich. And they didn't get rich off of other people's backs. They gave jobs to people, and they continue to give jobs to people today. If you want to become rich, you need to start your own business. Find out what needs to be done. What can I sell to the public that's going to, or something that for the public is going to make me rich. But I don't think the goal of us should be to be rich. I think the goal of us should be to spread God's word, walk in what he has given us. If we're poor, so what? As long as God is with us, we're rich, right? If we're wealthy, And we have that money to give to the poor to help. That's a blessing for them and a blessing for the poor people, right? And that's what even Yeshua said, that, that we'll always have poor. The poor will always be here. And the poor is an opportunity for those who have much to bless them, right? And in this, like I said, you take a look at Israel and the descendants of Jacob and all the things that they have given to this world. Medicine, science, civilization, hospitals, schools. That's all Israel. It's all the descendants of Israel. And you even take a look at the Nobel Prizes, that have come out. And it's a secular organization. But the majority of people who have received these different Nobel Prizes and stuff, especially in science and stuff like that, are Jewish people. Huh? Einstein is one. Einstein was a religious Jew. He wasn't secular. I know I've heard people say that he was, but he wasn't. A lot of his hypothesis and stuff that he was able to prove came from the Bible, from the Torah, and he even talks about that. There's a book out, I can't remember what it's called. It's something that somebody wrote from a biography or whatever about him and stuff. But it talks about some of that he wasn't an atheist. He loved God. That's where he got a lot of his scientific ideas, as well as a lot of scientists before that that got from the Bible. Evolution, on the other hand, that's why it was the idea of evolution was to try and prove the Bible wrong, to get people to quit believing the Bible, to do their own thing. And that's why you can't prove evolution. That's why it's still a theory of evolution. That's not fact, right? If it was fact, it wouldn't be called a theory of evolution. But do animals evolve? Not into other animals or new animals, but they do what do you call it? Well, they don't evolve, but they adapt, right? They adapt. That's a natural function. We adapt. Mankind, when they move to other climates and stuff, they learn to adapt to those climates. They learn to adapt to the food that's there. They learn to adapt this way or that way. We don't evolve into new animals or anything like that. We just learn to adapt. And that's what animals do too. And that's how God designed it. Anyways, the thing is that through Jacob, all the nations would be blessed. So when Israel did go into diaspora, and especially with Rome, Israel was dispersed throughout the world for sure for them. I mean, even at that time they were dispersed, but even greater numbers went out, especially those who believe in Yeshua, that he is the Messiah, that in that sense, and went throughout the world and blessed the nations with the knowledge that Yeshua is the Messiah and that Yeshua is the Torah. That's what we need to get back to, right? That's why I love that. Really, that book, Tent of David, is really good because it's establishing a lot of those things that I kind of misunderstood, to be honest with you. But it's making so many things practical now. I understood that how I have made mistakes on some of this stuff, Tent of David by Boaz Michael from First Fruits of Zion. Good book. The other one is by Toby Janicki, which we've done, is God Fears. Excellent book. But we need to know and understand. And the idea is to bring back the Jewishness back to Christianity. That Yeshua is a Jew. He didn't become a Christian. The disciples didn't become Christians. They remained Jews, observant Jews. It wasn't until later with the persecutions and stuff that things kind of got wacky. But the idea that God has is to bring us all back to the Torah, back to Israel, bring both Jew and Gentile, like the song we sung, Jew and Gentile, one in Messiah, one in Yeshua, right? That's God's plan. And that's the blessing that Jacob and Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob were given by God, that we bless the nations. And that's what we need to do, is bless the nations through our relationship with God and through our walk as a witness. As Rav Shaul says, we should be a living sacrifice. And what does that mean? That means a witness. that no matter what, that still continue to walk in his ways, walk in God's ways, and promote the Torah, promote Yeshua as the Messiah, as the prophet like unto Moses, right? That's what we have to do. So, as we go and go through the week, we had Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving is an awesome holiday. It's built off of of Sukkot. When the pilgrims came, they kept the Jewish festivals. They were like a large messianic group in a sense. They used Hebrew. They even had in their own community used Hebrew names for each other. If you take a look at the universities that they founded, instead of Greek being on their on their letterheads and stuff, it's Hebrew. And when they realized that God had saved them, because many of them died, they tried to do a socialist type of environment where everybody was given property to work, but everything belonged to everybody. And in the first couple of years, many of them died. Because what happens, you got some people who work hard and some people who just, I'll get it anyway, why should I have to work, you know? And that's what socialism promotes, is people who are unproductive. And that's what we're seeing even in our country. And we see that in European countries that have adopted socialism, that, you know, what have they, technology-wise and stuff, what have they done? Nothing. And their economies are huge because they're paying for everybody else, you know, and it's not good. God designed us He designed us not in that sense, but because of the fall of man, that through our hardship and through struggle, that we learn to appreciate God and Him and to grow. And that's why He says that if you don't work, you should not eat, right? And those who aren't eating, who aren't working and stuff, are causing a big burden on society, because those of us who do work, our taxes are up high so that we can pay them so they can stay home and not do anything, right? And we can't do that. That's why, I'm sorry to say, but I'm not saying capitalism is any better. Capitalism has its problems too, but nothing like socialism or communism. Those are all atheistic based. They try and eliminate your reliance on God, but rely on the government for everything you have. And we should, capitalism, one of its problems is that we learn to rely on ourselves, but in that we should, with our struggles, learn to rely on God. But we do have people that take advantage of it, and that's the way it is anywhere. That's just the way human beings are. The free market system is a much better system than that we have. We have both capitalist, free market, and we have some socialism in our economic thing. And they do work together, not the greatest, but because we do see these things happening. But anyways, as we go, just, you know, remember that we are supposed to be a light for God. And not just on Shabbat or on Sundays, but every day. We should be living it out, walking it, right? So let's remember that as we go. We'll bow our heads and say as we do the priestly blessing. Our God and God of our fathers, bless us with the threefold blessing in the Torah written by the hand of Moses, your servant, and pronounced by Aaron and his sons, the priests, your holy people, as it is said. May the Lord bless you and protect you. May the Lord make his face shine on you and be gracious to you. May the Lord turn his face towards you and grant you peace. Yevarechecha Adonai v'yishmerecha. Ya'er Adonai panav elecha v'yichunecha. Yisa Adonai panav elecha v'yasem lecha shalom. Going to have a great rest of Shabbat, a great week coming up. We've got Hanukkah coming up in a few weeks. So we'll be having a party here on the 20th. There'll be Sabbath is the 20th, but in the evening after Sabbath, we'll be having a party here, a celebration for Hanukkah. different foods and stuff like that, and the reading of the Hanukkah story, and just a good time. We get together, some games and stuff, playing dreidel and other things as well, hopefully, more of that stuff. Tuesday night we have our Torah Club study. If you're wondering what Torah Club is out there, just check out ffoz.org or torahclub.org. You can read about it. And if you're looking, and they'll even help you find a club. And then also on Wednesday night we have our study, reading through the Tent of David by Boaz Michael. We'll be on 2B, questions 2B, right? No, 2A. 2A, yeah, 2A. So we have questions for 2A because we were splitting the, huh?
You get ahead of yourself.
Yeah, I do, because I'm ahead of it, but anyways. So everybody's welcome to join us. We're having a meal after, every Shabbat we have a meal afterwards to fellowship together and stuff. And of course everybody's welcome for that. So other than that, remember to keep Aiden's grandfather up in prayer, also his dad up, or grandmother I mean, and Aiden's father up in prayer. Different things going on there, I don't know what. I know his grandmother was diagnosed with cancer again, but I don't know what's going on with his dad, but he's in the hospital in Duluth, so keep him up in prayer. I know there's other things. With this weather and stuff, pray for safety for everybody, especially the school bus drivers having to drive in it and stuff, and teachers and stuff like that too. So, but other than that, I think that's about it. So, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat, 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 Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat, 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 Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat, 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 Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat, 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 Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat, 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 Shabbat Shalom. Good Shabbat.